Hey everyone, my name is Charlie and today I would like to share my thoughts on Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft, the first book in the Books of Babel series. A few years back, my friend Joy recommended this book to me after she had had it recommended to her by her son and subsequently gone on to read the first 3 books in the series in quick succession. This follows the man Thomas Senlin. He has headed to the infamous Tower of Babel, having spent years reading guidebooks and developing his own personal mythos about the place. And he has decided that for his honeymoon, he will take his new wife, Maria, to this tower. However, when they arrive, they are quickly separated and the novel becomes this quest for Senlin to find his wife. During his time in the tower, he is going to discover that this is much riskier than he thought, that it isn't the utopia that he had imagined it was going to be. We have the basements, we have the hods, we have some very cruel punishments and a recognition that you cannot trust anybody within the tower and that there are definitely some corrupt goings on. I've heard this book described as being in the steampunk genre. There's definitely a lot of steam mentioned and a lot of steam power within the book. However, having not read anything from the steampunk genre before, I can't say whether or not that's true. I can't say whether or not this is a good book in the steampunk genre. However, I did find out that this book had previously been self-published and now it's been traditionally published. It's had great success and I'm glad of that. It has been a strange one for me to properly formulate my thoughts on because having finished the book, I don't have any impetus to want and go and read the sequels immediately. However, there is part of me that wants to see how the story is going to turn out because it definitely feels like a continuous saga. This book could stand on its own. It does have this end, and similar to what I said when I read The Eye of the World, the author does give you a jumping off point. If you just wanted to see how this story resolves, then fantastic. You can end things here and not have to worry about that. But there is definitely room for a sequel and the reader is left wanting to see how things are going to work out for the characters. I definitely liked the character of Senlin because he is presented as the everyman, so he becomes the reader's conduit into this very dark world. And in the beginning, you feel everything as Senlin is feeling it. You feel his wonder at finally being able to visit the tower, and then you see him slowly lose these ideas that everything is fantastic around him. It is almost as though Wonderland is slowly being disintegrated and you're able to see that it's actually a lot more dark and grim when you get to the heart of it. There are some decidedly gruesome scenes within this book, which I think that were I younger, I would have been able to cope with, but as I said in my vlog, I became a bit more sensitive to gruesome things and gore last year. And so there were a few moments where I had to put this book aside, but that is not to this book's detriment. That is just for a faint-hearted reader like myself. I like the episodic nature of this book. It is told in 3 parts and it very much feels like they are 3 independent stories, and when you get to the last one, parts of the first 2 begin to come together and you understand how it all fits rather than it all being entirely separate puzzle pieces. I like the fact that in the end, characters that had seemed seemingly innocuous and just as side characters in a story to help the main character progress as they set him out on quests actually had more of an importance than we had originally thought. I found the writing somewhat dense, but I also found a bit of whimsy within the prose, but it was barbed whimsy, really. It was like, this is enchanted, but it's going to harm you. It was like a Grimm's fairy tale in that way, that there is this almost fairy tale aspect to what Senlin believes about the tower, but everything comes with its price, and it's usually a harsh one. Towards the end, I found myself reminded of Dickens' London when we see where Senlin ends up, and there was an idea of murkiness there that reminded me of Fagin and Oliver Twist. However, I can't say whether that's the same for the book, as I've only ever seen Oliver Twist in film, but there was just something about a specific character in here that gave me this idea he was somewhat like Fagin, and this other character was like a very dark version of Nancy. But it's probably just me pulling these parallels. They might not have been there at all, it's just me making them. I think for a debut novel and for the first book in a series, it's done a stellar job. And I would recommend it to fans of the fantasy genre. But indeed, I also thought that I might recommend it to fans of classic literature because the author does write with that voice. Just a little bit, just a tad. The more I read it, the more plot heavy it was. I thought this could really appeal to readers of Victorian literature who don't mind a little bit of gore. Although I keep talking about the goriness and the gruesomeness of this book, it's really not the worst that I've ever read. It's not gratuitous in any way. It's just, I'm a sensitive soul in my old age. I think just the time that it's supposedly set as well, I kept thinking it must be around the time of the Victorian or the Edwardian era, with the introduction of electricity and this talk about how it's more expensive. Like, there's nothing that is magical, it's just wonderful. It's airships and steam-powered things, and in my mind I kept thinking of Studio Ghibli and the way in which that world worked, and in my mind that's how I saw this. I saw this animated by Ghibli, and it just had that weird sense of darkness and wonder to it that I found particularly enthralling. And even though I'm not at the point where I want to go out and buy the sequels immediately and rush through the series, I still look forward to doing that in future, whenever that may be. And that's Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft. If you have read this book and would like to discuss it, then please feel free to do so in the comments. If you've read any of the sequels and would recommend them as well, then please let me know. I hope that you have got something out of this video, and until next time, that is all.